Hello, viewers, and welcome to Spotlight here on Hope TV, where you look and live. And we are always glad to have you on this program. And this program is also for you. So do engage us on 22232. That's our text message line. Also on Facebook and Twitter, as we talk today on the state of the nation. We always have to reflect about the things that are going on in our country, because today is one thing, before it's even resolved, another one is on, it's coming up. And so we have all these things going on. And so talking about the state of the nation is something that we have to consistently do. And to help us do that is one gentleman whose insights always will impact you in the way you think, on the way you do things, because he is gifted with insight, especially in matters governance, matters politics. He is a politics and governance expert. At the same time, he is a political commentator. We've known him that way on for quite some time. But he is also, importantly, a Christian, a man of faith, and also a husband and a father. It's none other than Gabriel Muthuma. Welcome, brother.
Pastor, thank you so much for having me.
Good to see you.
Asante sana.
Yeah.
Asante sana.
And people don't know much about you, especially we just know you about with your punchlines and with your with your passion and taking on the highs, and challenging their views. Totally. And we don't usually hear a lot about your Christian,
Rarely.
Yeah, the Christian side of you.
Rarely.
Can you maybe tell us about your faith and your inspiration and how this works out in your governance, politics,
Totally.
analysis, all these things?
Thank you, Pastor, and hello to our viewers as well. Thanks actually for bringing this out. Many people actually do not know, that I'm quite a deep core Christian. And I can understand this, just because, half of the time you see, this dude on TV and that's just it. But sometimes it's actually good to understand, where does this person come from? What is his background? Actually, I grew up, the people that know Muthuma, the name Muthuma will tell you, if you go to Huruma in Mathare, this name is very common, because that's where I grew up. And I was a very good soccer player, by the way.
You grew up in Huruma?
I grew up in Mathare.
Mathare.
Back then, Mathare started out all the way, I think, from Kariako, all the way to Dandora, back in the day.
Isn't it amazing, the transformation
yes.
God is able
to
do?
Yes. And I remember back in the day when my MP was, I think, was Andrew Gumba. That's the guy we knew back then. So those are ages ago. And so when the church was coming of age, evangelicals were coming of age, we were under the guise of a very great person that I respect called Bishop Arthur Kitonga. This is the guy who took us in his wings. As a matter of fact, he's more, if I would use any other name, which is not fatherly, I think it would be doing him a very major disservice, because it was not only me alone. He brought so many young men, under his wings, and we were really taught the great Christian way of upbringing, which actually has continued to shape, the things and the way we live today. So that's where I started my spiritual journey, all throughout. And after that great man of God, I went under the wings of another great man of God, Bishop David Lai.
Those are big names.
Oh, yes. Yes.
No wonder you become a big name yourself.
Call these people up and ask him, do you know this guy around? And so I have also, brothers who've continued to, shape my Christian life, the likes of Bishop David Moredi, very great guys, deep in insight. And so my Christian journey is quite whole.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's good to know. It feels like quite a story.
I know.
I'm sure that is what you can say in a few seconds or in a minute. I'm sure there are volumes and volumes of content.
Totally.
And stories.
Oh yes. People have been pushing me, write a book. Actually, what gives you the impression that I have not started in one, right? I'm not thinking, because it's always good, and I feel sometimes we rush our lives a lot to the destination, but rarely do we take time to focus on the journey.
Yeah.
Because a part of that journey is where you make a lot of mistakes. Part of that journey, you know, as you go along to reach that final destination that you want to head in, this is where you meet a lot of uncertainties, you know, and so as much as the destination is important, I also feel the journey as well is quite something as important just as the destination will
and
be.
the journey is what makes jaws drop.
True.
Just to know
Exactly.
the process it's taken.
Exactly.
And you know, just to on the same, the way you've grown up and
Right.
and the way the church took you in and
Yes.
the way you describe yourself as, you know, core. You know,
Yes.
you have a Christian core.
Yes.
Now, how on a your day-to-day basis,
Right.
how is faith inspiring your vision?
You see, for the longest time, we were taught to pray and read your Bible every day. That has actually been a very core ingredient in you know, in part of my life, in actually my life, the way I do things. And I remember even my own mother, my mom actually was the one who started creating that deep core foundation. She was a very prayerful woman. You know, if you are to go to the places where we grew up, all my neighbors knew my mom because my mom would wake up at 5 in the morning to start praying. And then she would pray loudly. You know, she would wake us. Actually, we didn't need an alarm. We would wake up, you know, to go to school, and my mom started
amazing,
praying.
you know.
And the one beautiful thing about my mom is that she would name all her children by name in prayer. And so sometimes you look at, my goodness,
I'm
where
sure
you
she
are
would
today.
get louder when she comes to Muthuma.
Yeah, and by the, and I don't
Oh
know why-
Lord, rain on that boy, you know.
And then sometimes I always felt, you know,
Yeah.
I talk to my sisters and brothers nowadays, and I'm like, do you guys think or feel at one point I was the black sheep of the family? Because they always made fun of me. I was the light one in the family, like in skin complexion. And so when I was dirty, everybody would know this guy was dirty.
Yeah.
So that faith, I think, and every time, most of the time, I run back when we do talk Christianity, and this is a topic I like a lot. When we do talk Christianity, I always find myself saying, I am going back to the gospel of my mother. And Pastor, this is not because of so many things, but it's because of how the gospel today has become convoluted. I really get so passionate when I see things or hear things that I know deep down are not what I learned.
I know we are going to be talking about that somewhere,
Great.
hopefully.
Totally.
In
We should
this
actually.
program,
We
because
should,
the
yes.
church, as an agent
Yes.
of development in a
Yes.
society,
Yes.
we don't want to miss that
No,
in our
totally,
conversation.
totally,
And it's
totally.
interesting that today we'll begin also our conversation on a good note.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
because one, of course,
Yes.
just knowing that you are a man of faith,
Yes.
and we need a lot of those people,
Totally.
especially in spaces of influence, and also happily. Kenya is this week on the global
Yes.
limelight
Yes.
because of a Franciscan brother.
Yes.
His name is Peter
Peter.
Tabichi,
Peter Tabichi,
who
yes.
has been amazingly awarded the Global Teacher Prize.
Yes.
Of course, people don't hear the Franciscan brother, they don't hear the Global Teacher Prize,
Right.
they hear the 100 million.
Yes, yes, the $1 million.
The 100 million Kenya shillings, they're like, whoa, you know.
And
And,
you know,
what's a brother going to do with this? He's going to take it to the order, you know.
and you know, it's taken shape. You've seen on Twitter. Whatever. It was like a lot of. Yes, after the congratulatory messages,
Yeah.
everybody's like, "Hey, that's a lot of money. What are you going to do with it?" And I
Yeah.
mean, you can't help but ask. But the good thing that I'm, just watching the TV yesterday, and even the message from the president, which was quite, had quite a hard hitting reality of the character of the person we are talking about this morning. Is, for them to be in one stage, you're talking about a Franciscan father in the Emirates with the sheikh, the ruler, or the son, ruler of Dubai. And I mean, just look at that setup of religion.
Yeah.
And still, the best person was Peter. So I think apart from what we learn about him and the character of this gentleman is the life behind it. And Pastor, let me tell you, it is, because I've really read it. Even yesterday, I read the speech of Ambassador Amina Mohammed who was actually present in that particular meeting, and you could tell that there were so many things that this gentleman went to do. Yes, like you put it earlier on, it's a remote school that really do. Even if you ask any person walking in the streets, tell them to pick that location, half of us would have a problem with. And not only that, it is a kind of character of Peter that actually I believe raised him to be the winner of this Global Teachers Award.
And would want to delve quite a little bit just on the character.
Exactly.
And the fact that he is in a small school.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And in one of those remote places, actually arid areas.
Totally.
And he shares, we can of course give credit this maybe to his order, but just that he's a Kenyan who makes a consistent choice to share 80% of a teacher's salary.
Imagine.
With the community.
Imagine.
That spirit of sharing,
right.
Which is so sometimes lacking.
Right.
Can you just comment on that?
Yes. And it has a serious value chain, if you look at it. And by value chain, I mean the value of character, back and forth. Somebody giving out 80% of their pay, this is their hard-earned money. You'd have expected them to raise the question of, you know what, the Ministry of Education has a budget for this. The county leadership has a budget for this, but still you see the need, and on top of that need, you use your own funding. He has actually evolved from being a sympathetic person to a very empathetic person. I've seen a problem. I know I can actually put that or push it to the person behind who probably is responsible, but I say, you know what, I think I have the power to do something. Let me tell you something, Pastor. This is something amazing, which I think we may actually point to him and say, this man is full of good deeds. This man is full of generosity. This is not about generosity. There's a word I like coining. It's called for grace.
For grace.
For grace. This is where, for instance, you, and this is not, I'm just giving you an example, hypothetically, say, Pastor Furi does not like visitors coming to his home. He does not like friends when they come to his home to take time, because he needs his time to relax, watch TV, read the Bible, get ready for service on Sunday. But now, Pastor Furi has entered another locale of for grace. It is not only him inviting his friends for a sleepover, it's him inviting his enemies. That's deep.
That is deep.
It's no longer the people you're comfortable with. It's inviting your enemies, having a meal with them.
Space.
That's for grace. And that's why I'm telling you, you see somebody like Peter, he realizes, yes, I have a salary. I can do what I need to do with this salary. There's so many things. There's help. We need to get things in order. We need to educate. We need to fervently ground good mannerisms in these children. But the money facet, even though it is not as incoming, he still goes deep in his pocket. That is deep. That's for grace.
That's true.
Oh, come on. Empathy. Empathy has an element of degree where you have to pull the handbrake and say, oh man, enough is enough. How do I survive with the only 20%? But that was not his problem. And so, as much as people are questioning what he'll do with $1 million, I can guarantee you what he'll do with that money.
The trend is clear. When you think about a story like this, one of the things about our country, first, I love the fact that he's a Kenyan. He's a Kenyan in this country that we critique so much,
and where everybody wants everything for himself.
He's a Kenyan, and he may not have been elevated at the local level. No. It's the world that discovered this guy.
Exactly,
it's the world that discovered him.
Totally.
Now,
that's a big one. Actually,
it's interesting also how stories like this get lost.
Yes,
they will trend on Twitter for a little while,
and then
but how can we learn of transforming, somebody like Peter, Tabichi, to, and I know you like policy, and you love matters like that.
Yes.
How do we convert, Tabichi to what we can call Tabichism?
It's actually very, if we were to be honest with ourselves, it's just actually to ingrain his character and values into culture. Let me repeat that. Ingrain his values and character into a culture. So that we can say what you've just said, Tabichism.
Yeah.
So that we can say, you know what? why can you not have a culture that this man started? You know, how can we learn? Where can we put him in society for him to continue doing more? Because now you realize if you are to give him that $1 million, he will do more with it than when you give it to an administrator or a government administrator.
You're right.
Because this is somebody who has proven himself based on reaching out selflessly to his own pocket to do something which he believes is righteous.
You know, somebody said that even if he gives 80% of the 100 million,
Yes.
he still have some few. If you use that 80% mathematics on this one, he still have a few millions to,
And you know the other thing,
spice up his own life.
but you know the other thing, Pastor, what we've and I think this is where we are saying even if he gives 80%, he'll still be left with about $200,000. But you still ask, probably what does he need? There's a very good speech that Barack Obama gave sometime, I think last year, in the Nelson Mandela Prize or something, I remember. And I think it's made a lot of rounds in our TVs and our YouTube channels and our social media, where he's saying that even if you have a big house, you'll only probably need 1 bedroom. It doesn't matter he was actually trying to tell us whatever you think that is more, you will only need very little. Even when you sit down in all the best buffets, you only have 1 stomach to feed, yours. How much can you eat? So I think it is a value system that we must ask. How has somebody like Peter Tabichi been able to do what he has done?
At 36.
At 36.
Yeah.
And by the way,
I mean, he's been doing it for a while.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is somebody probably who never talked about it. And that's why I'm liking it when you put that he was discovered by the world. I mean, half of us didn't know there was a guy like that who existed.
You know why?
Yeah.
And I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah.
Because he's not wanted in Kenya. A person of those values, you can't rise.
I'm telling you. Yeah,
Because
exactly.
you will inhibit.
Oh, he makes us look bad.
You'll inhibit what people want to do. Bring this value system, into all this, what's going on. No, we don't want you.
Exactly.
The kind of, you're too good
Yes.
to be in the, to be on the front line. Yeah.
And Pastor, one of these fine days, I think, because there's something good when you, and religion notwithstanding, there's something great about Catholicism. And most of the time I reach out and read a lot about the likes of Mother Teresa. Posthumously, people are still fighting for her remains. How crazy is this?
Now, it just shows that she has her life.
Yes.
Just out of, being sensitive to the neighbor.
Yes.
Has outlived,
Exactly.
her own body.
And her story.
And became a whole,
Yes.
a whole thing,
and
a whole philosophy when
her
you think
story is
about
magical.
it. And so, because you are always on this forums and because you are a policy person, now find a place for Tabichism. Let this story not just go.
No.
Let's look for a place for Tabichism.
We should.
And the good place to find it is just immediately, because look at the drought situation in Turkana.
Exactly.
And it's sad.
Yes.
A lot of things have come out of this. It's because, one, the government says, no one has died out of drought.
Right.
Now, news people are going there. Personal pilgrimages are being made there by people who feel they need to do something.
Right.
And they do not agree with that kind of position, right? But then the question we ask ourselves is, what's the place of a life, especially a life in a remote area of Kenya, a life that is, say, in a remote part of Turkana? What's the value of that life in the Kenyan society today?
Actually, Pastor, for the longest time, I've actually been fighting with that very question. I'm like, are these people less of Kenyans, or are they less of being human. I gave a story the other day, and this is good for people to hear. And I was telling people, if you look at Consummate Africa, the research that they did of the top 10 countries that are food secure, you'll find countries like Tunisia being number one. I know Morocco and Egypt also find a way there. But the number 10 country is what actually bothered me and drove me in to understand, how do these people survive? How have they survived? It was Namibia. And I was telling people, you know, the eastern third of Namibia is inhibited by the Kalahari Desert. The places we grew up watching The Gods Must Be Crazy, the Bushmen. These people have mastered.
You have to complete the statement. Bushmen and Hottentots.
And Hottentots. There you go.
You remember that.
Like, these people don't die of hunger. All right? But that notwithstanding, the research notwithstanding, we come home and ask, we have learned, we have very good fertile grounds. Countries like Egypt find their source of livelihood in our backyard, Lake Victoria.
Let's just even bring it closer home. Just a few kilometers down the road.
Yes.
There is maize.
You imagine.
That the government can't buy.
Imagine.
Right?
Imagine.
More overflowing, rotting maize.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Just maybe 200, 300 kilometers from there.
Yes. So I ask, your question comes in, what is the price of life?
What's the value?
And what's the value of actually giving sustenance to that life?
You know, you would imagine there are some communities whereby if one person
is
said to have died of hunger, one,
the whole mechanisms of production will stop.
No, you know, a moral question again.
Yeah.
We would say, somebody may say, oh, they didn't die out of hunger, they died out of another disease. Okay, they died of another disease, but did you ask whether there's a dispensary close enough?
Yes.
You know, for that person?
You see, it's like that.
And if that dispensary has medicine,
and you see, to me, Pastor, death is death. The first thing we should be asking is, could it have been avoided? Even when we are talking about an issue like our brothers who perished with the flight Ethiopia 301. Today, the people who engage and disengage about such things are asking, how could that have been avoided? As we speak, there are so many people sitting somewhere thinking, how should we ensure that this never happen again? Engineers from Boeing and people from the aviation world are sitting to understand this kind of aircraft. You've seen countries have grounded. What are they telling you? What are they telling? This is not about the aircraft. This is about the lives lost. And until, Pastor, we start having serious conversations about the way we are going about in matters life, I can guarantee you, sooner or later, our lives are going to be so worthless that you'll be finding somebody dead in the streets and you walk as if that's nothing. Because food by design is a basic need. The government of the day has actually its first basis of existence is to ensure that these people are fed. And I'm not talking about somebody who gets up and does not work. No, there should be mechanisms to support the growth of that individual. You know, Pastor, we have lived knowing very well that there's going to be drought. It just didn't happen by the day. Even before the government started saying they died of other natural causes, would we have asked, is it as is the death as a byproduct of this man lacking food, that he was unable to take the drugs that are usually, given the fact that you're saying he could have been sick, and we accept he could have been sick. You know, there are other diseases where you need to feed, to sustain that level of medicine. And if food is not there and you die as a result of that disease, guess what? The end product remains that you lacked food.
And in the same line is that sometimes you see, you tend to see as if, the officers, that represent the government as they speak, is as if they are also trying to cover their shame, because the narrative that has been going on, the national narrative, totally, totally no one in the current heated, political narrative and
Right.
political, talks going on,
Right.
ever mentioned
Totally.
angry people.
Totally.
Now, the moment they are mentioned,
Yes.
all of a sudden they become experts.
Exactly.
In the same area.
Exactly. Exactly.
And that brings a big also question, especially this is related to our faith.
Yes.
The place, or what you can call the neighbor consciousness.
Yes. Yes.
Because when Jesus talked about loving your neighbor and our country, and especially our leaders, how sensitive, can you say, is their kind of leadership, neighbor oriented?
Right.
Yes.
And I think this may come out as a very good example in what we are discussing about. How do we marinate what is happening in places like Turkana and generally the areas in our country where hunger, drought, and famine are actually knocking? And it will take us back to the biblical Joseph and the dreams. After the dream, and he was given 7 years of plenty, and the 7 years when there will be famine and everything. I would have believed that his prayer was God to give him the energy to plan, not to give him food. Plan, because you have 7 years of plenty. So how do you plan for the years where there will not be food? So yes, Pastor, we can be talking our churches being full, but there's something we are not really marinating, and that's planning. We know very well we did not just wake up yesterday to what we are reading, to drought. We've had all this time to plan. And guess what? This just tells us we need to actually change our prayer from just being prayers to being action items. We'll say, hang on a minute, we need to plan. We must wake up and have a conversation about, if we have this kind or this food and maize and what have you, how do we plan for the next 4 or 5 seasons so that we may not die of this hunger? And I think that is a conversation which I think is time-bound. It's already been overtaken by time, because at the very time when people are dying, we need to start questioning ourselves, are we good planners?
And there are some things that clearly shouldn't happen at such a time as this. Especially given that this is what you can call almost a localized situation, a localized drought. There's no rain in other places, but there's no, there's food in other places.
Correct.
And at such a time as this, I think for a country that has been alive since 1963, this should really, really bring us to a place of introspection. That a person is dying out of lack of food. At this particular time.
Imagine.
In our story, at a time when that drought is actually localized, you might say. And then another dimension to it, which to me is, kind of good and bad. I don't know what you just tell us what you think about it. Usually when there's hunger in this country, there is a Kenya for Kenyans. And that campaign is launched, and a lot of people, give lots. And the next thing we know is within 3 weeks or so, flagging off of these trucks to these places. The Red Cross, is also a big channel. But now, the Kenyan people, when the Red Cross raised an alarm and said, let's collect money to help these people. Kenyans rose against it.
Exactly.
Can you comment
Exactly.
on that?
And you know why? I think people have just come to realize that these are what you call managed crisis. You want a situation to exist so that you can be seen as, doing something, or this situation must continue so that your relevance may actually be realized. The problem with that, I go back to what I told you about the Joseph years. Planning. If we only plan, because Pastor, you know very well, after this, bar none, we are going to have floods. What are we going to do with all this water? Are we going to claim several months from now that we are back to, the kind of heated and scorchy sun that we've seen? Meaning, when do we have time to plan our affairs? It is actually very bad the way you put it at a time like this. These things should not be happening. I reminded my followers on Facebook the other day, and this is just a little bit off the side. I reminded that it's been 35 years since the song "We Are the World" was sung for Africa. 35 years. Some countries took cue from that and they've progressed. You never hear them saying they have hunger issues because they realized we needed to do something. We need to have a serious national conversation about food. We need to be very food secure. We have food security as one of the 4 pillars of the Big Four agenda, which means that when that came to play, people should have sat down, build a reservoir for food. And you put it so rightly. Why should this thing be happening at a time like this? How poor are we in matters planning that we must be caught flat-foot now to start raising M-Pesa, pay bills, and blah, blah, blah. We need to start running, taking food there. What about next year? Are we going to be at the same place?
You know, when you say poor, I go back to what you talked about earlier.
Yes.
You know, and again to, tabichism.
Yes, yes.
Because you mentioned empathy.
Yes.
And there's a concept you mentioned for grace.
Yes.
And with all the planning has to come from a place of empathy.
Correct.
A place where life is valued.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
A place where leaders can stand and say, we are sorry.
Yes.
That one of us or 2 of us have died out of hunger.
Correct.
We are committing that no one else in that area is going to die out of hunger.
Totally.
And we see the entire movement, because that's what raises hope.
Totally.
You know? That's what raises hope. And we pray that as we go on, we shall rediscover the value of life.
Yes.
The value of
life.
And,
it is.
Because even when you look now as we move to matters corruption, because we have talked about this until we have reached a point where we can talk about integrity.
Right.
Right now is a narrative of corruption. Until it's reversed to a place where we can talk about integrity.
Yes.
We have to keep talking about these corruption. And, even in the same context, you find that Kenyans feel like, 2 billion has been released. And everyone is like, okay.
Yes.
I mean, whose is it? Because it may not be,
of course,
for the people on the ground.
And how much of it? How much of it will get to the other side?
Exactly.
We cannot help but question the administration. And when I talk about, each county, very well, Pastor, they have 2.5% of their budget, counties, which should actually be earmarked to fight emergency, occurrences. For instance, this drought that we are seeing. So you already have several billions, if I may put it, which should actually be going towards this. Question is, why has it not gone? Apart from that, a county like Turkana, which has 6 constituencies, I think 6 or 5 constituencies, each constituency receiving about 100 million. All right. So where does this money go? What does it do? So if hunger is the key emergency in that area, why is this funding not going to take care of this issue? Because this is a biting issue. Forget the development. This is an issue about human sustenance. Why has it not been put where it is required? So the back and forth that we are going to have is, why is the administration not alive to these things? And the other day I heard the governor talking. I know this money is not enough. He's a politician. And as much as we give him that, he still has not explained why he has not been able to plan properly about such an occurrence. So we go back again to ourselves as leaders. And when I say leaders, I call every Kenyan a leader in their own facet. The reason being, they sit at the table of selection or election when it comes to leadership in this country. So when all of us sit down, can we not make this a national agenda where we write it into the testaments of this country and say, this will not happen again. This will not happen again. What will take us there? I can guarantee you, matters policy can actually be used to alleviate this. Because other countries have done it. Other countries have won it. And we travel a lot in matters benchmarking. MCAs are always out of the country benchmarking.
Even going to Congo to check out stadiums.
Imagine. So you ask yourself,
Yeah.
this is an issue that's really affecting Kenya. And countries that have actually become food secure, Pastor, most of these countries don't have a big vegetation cover that we have. So what is the problem?
I want to, again, staying on that corruption matter.
Yes.
The president seems to be we have an angry president right now.
Yes.
On so many fronts.
Correct.
And every time he speaks, he speaks very passionately against corruption.
Right.
But that speech is not yet converting into, maybe what the DCI or what the DPP, from their offices can say that we have begun now to push back on this.
Right.
We've begun to gain grounds.
Correct.
And the president has just a few
years left.
A few years left.
Yes.
And of course we know that the forces against for corruption are pushing back, right?
Yes.
The ones who want things to stay in status quo are pushing back.
Yes.
Just asking, do you, in the remaining season, do you feel that the anger of the president will really yield durable fruits, especially on this front of just trying to bring a new terrain, of fairness and justice, when it comes to economics, when it comes to development? What's your feel?
You see, and you can tell his anger actually comes from a very deep place. And if that anger was to manifest itself, it will still be anger. It will not translate into anything. All right? Pastor, I've mentioned this in other broadcasts. We are not, or people don't get corrupt because there is absence of a strong penal code. People don't get corrupt because there are no laws in this country. People don't get corrupt because there are no prisons or police stations. People get corrupt because they can get away with it. It's as easy as that. From where the president sits, every day he reads or he receives something called a presidential daily briefing. And the president actually would know, if you were to have a very candid discussion or interview with the president, he has a bird's eye view of all matters corruption. He can actually point to us where the major problem is. Question we should be asking is, why is that particular problem not getting fixed? Now remember, to be fair, corruption did not start with President Uhuru Kenyatta. It's actually been there throughout. And I remember even when Obama was here, he said no country in the world can really say they are immune from the tribulations of corruption. But there are countries that have actually fought it, that they are remaining with a very little bit that does not affect their production or economies. Ours today is a cancer that is killing this country. And Pastor Furi, let me put it to you. The way I have seen, given the fact that, by grace, I've traveled to other nations of the world and I've seen, if we continue the way we are continuing as a country, there will be no country left in years to come. Our county governments will not be able to sustain. We will not have a devolution or something we call devolution in years to come. Because if we are spending half of our budget, out of 3 trillion, 1.5 trillion is going to pay salaries and things like those. The other half goes to pay debt. And out of that, a lot of that money is still stolen through corrupt means. What kind of development or agenda do we have for this great nation? So I can understand the president's anger. I can understand at one point he took CSs to parliament where he told parliament, these are the people you were saying that are corrupt. And that's where it ended. I am talking about a multi-agent or multi-agency conversation of offices that are mandated by the constitutions, that have been given powers by the constitution rather, coming together and saying, we have produced a solution. And this solution is ABC. We need, for Wanjiku cares less about what the president is talking about, honestly. Wanjiku cares less about the discussion on corruption. What Wanjiru needs to see, Onyango or Wanjiku, whatever our constitution we call it, is people serving jail terms for stealing. If we all agree that because of corruption, children are dying in hospitals, education is being dwindled down.
People are dying in Turkana.
In Turkana.
Yeah.
If we agree that this is the genesis of all these problems, and the people who have done it are amongst us, and they are breaking bread with us on a given on daily basis, they are talking with us on daily basis, they are speeding in our roads and harassing all motorists. These are our own people who are killing our people. In fact, the people who voted for them. Then we have to deliberately sit down and say, this is the law, let's follow it. Remember, Pastor, there is a law. Question we should be asking the leadership today, why are people not following the law?
Why are people not following the law? You know, somebody said that the corruption status is so so huge,
right,
that we actually need new freedom fighters.
True.
We need a whole new band
True.
of freedom fighters today, because fighting for freedom, is really fighting against corruption. And what we need maybe is that whole band of people, a movement, that is proclaiming something new. Right? And we must. Because this has been sometimes analyzed many times as a moral question.
Correct.
It's about greed.
Yes.
It's about insensitivity to life. It's a moral question.
Yes.
And we definitely, as you talk about, they're multifaceted. That a force of different arms of our community coming together.
Correct.
We have to bring in the church.
Yes.
And ask ourselves.
Yes.
The church is, and all religions at that, I'm speaking the church specifically, is the moral custodian.
Correct.
So if there is no moral supply in the country, check the source, right?
Totally.
If there is no water supply, you check the water, the mouths and places like that, and ask, what is happening to to these places.
Correct.
So if there is no morality in the country, then check the source.
Totally.
Now, in terms of the church, and it being a big part of the fight against corruption, let's assess and rate the church.
Pastor, by the way, that's one of the best questions I've ever had somebody ask. In fact, the truth of the matter is we should be asking, where is the role, or what is the role of the church? Researchers have documented that Kenya is 80% Christian. That is a very huge number. So our conversation should start there. What's the morality, or what's the moral platform in our churches today? This is the way I think about it. The church in this train we are talking about, in matters governance, for the longest, they've acted as passengers. And I think it's the high time, and I'm calling it a high time, where the church must become the custodians of this platform. The church must take its rightful position as the custodian, as a stakeholder in the fight against corruption. Banan. When we talk about 80% of a religious, of a Christian culture, it should actually reflect in this country. Failure to which we are then part of the problem.
You've used a strong statement there, a strong description there. the church for the longest time
Yes.
have been passengers.
They've been passengers.
You've also said that the church now needs to be on the front line
Totally.
of this moral re-equipping.
Correct.
Moral renaissance.
It's actually re-engineering.
Re-engineering of this
Yes,
country.
yes.
Now, trying to win the two.
Yes.
Because what you seem to agree is
Yes.
that the church has a huge responsibility
Yeah, totally.
in this.
Totally.
Now, and you say that if the church is not able
Yes.
to show the way on
Yes.
this one, then it itself most
Yes.
likely is as sick as its community.
You know why? When you look at the world, and this I'm differentiating it totally with the church, the world is sustained on a daily basis by the advice of the adversary. All right? Therefore, the church must be guided by the creator of the universe, which means they can never be equal in interpretation, equal in thinking, and equal in results. Because as the world expresses her cluelessness, the church must express its highest wisdom as proof that the owner and the creator of the universe is resident inside them.
Now,
That's deep.
absolutely.
Failure to which we will failure to that, we will then confirm them and the world, they are equal in quality and interpretation.
And they both need salvation.
Totally.
Now, I'm asking, because there is a pastor
Yes.
watching this program right now.
Right.
And like Tabichi
Yes.
is in a small place
Yes.
in this country,
Right.
or a small church.
Yes.
And there's a Christian also watching this program and inspired by what you're saying.
Yes.
And the person is saying, I don't want to be a passenger anymore.
Right.
I've been thinking it
Exactly.
for quite a while.
Exactly.
But the question they're asking is, where do I start? As a pastor, where do I start? As a Christian, where do I start to take over?
Yes.
The moral platform, as you've
Right,
said.
right.
How do I start the values in re-engineering?
Exactly.
Where do I start? Can you just help us?
You see, you've brought something again. Brilliant, beautiful question. You remember back in the day, and if you read the story of Christ, which you see, I love those books, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, because the journey they bring out about Christ and the people that he met, and at every juncture when he spoke about salvation, there's one word that he told almost all these people, the people he healed. And these magical words were, sin no more. So, the words that we need to talk to the church and tell the church, that struggling pastor who feels that the moral decay has gone for far, far too long, is don't be comfortable anymore. And this is now where we go back to where we started. The era of sympathy must come to an end and be exchanged with empathy. Empathy is doing something, is not talking. And if I was to even encourage the president today, will be, Mr. President, sir, the sympathy have gone on for far, far too long. The sympathy can be there. Oh, I'm sorry. I sympathize with you, Pastor. Empathy is doing something, reaching out physically, doing something, standing out to be counted. But what is this something that the church must do? The church must change the culture. Since the beginning of time. Pastor, do you know the church is the only institution that I know, and probably you don't know any other institution that has stood the test of time? It's the church. Even if you go as far back as...
It's been there.
It's been there. And it's because they've always risen through adversity. So the question that we should be... actually, the encouragement we should be giving the church and the church leaders today is the people and your followers must see somebody who has been told to sin no more, meaning change your ways. If you are going up, start going down. If you are doing wrong, start doing right. If you are reading, close the book. If you are going behind, start moving in front. That is the kind of change that Jesus was talking about. And by the way, it was very radical. It was very radical. Sin no more.
You know,
you're like, sin no more. Okay.
Yeah.
You are going this side, go this side.
And,
it can never be radical as that.
Of course, in the same theme of freedom.
Yes.
You know, look, just proclaiming and creating freedom.
Right.
Then the church also now must, in a way, from your expression, and in this passion,
right,
this new vigor, to take over this platform, must also be bold enough,
right,
to speak truth to power.
Of course.
Not be impressed,
of course,
by power.
Of course.
But speak truth to power.
You see, when you look at David, after David sinned with Bathsheba, the prophet was sent to David. And the prophet did not go to make David comfortable. He went to tell him the ugly truth, that God was not pleased with him. And this is actually the hardest part of you telling a man that your child will die. Oh, that's an uncomfortable truth. But he had to say it because that was the message. So the church must ask and must pray enough to understand what is the message for leadership, and it must come unquoted.
You know what Prophet Nathan told David?
The
line was,
yes,
you are the man.
Exactly.
You are the man. Not in a hero way.
Yes.
But like you are the one who needs to be stricken.
Exactly.
And the other day I saw these WhatsApp messages that ran around. Maybe it's on light note.
Yes.
But the guy was calling and asking, Thunder, are you busy? I need Thunder, are you busy? Because so I need to deploy you someplace.
So the message to leadership, even back through in historic times, in biblical times, when it came to the kings, it was not quoted to make them feel comfortable. No. I mean, this is Nathan, bringing a very strong message to King David.
And King David was not just a king.
No. Yeah. And you see, after that, the leadership, when the church comes, the leadership must have the moral fortitude to listen and to change their ways. Because even the Bible talks about it. If, people who are called by name, it talks about how we listen to the voice of God, we change our, moving from our wicked ways, and then God will heal our land. If leaders listen to that, if they conform into those norms, I can guarantee you, it is a promise that our land will be healed. But other than that, look at what we are going through. And by the way, Pastor, you see, the issues that we are going through today, and you have seen them, the issues that we've gone through today, the Bible actually has a very good definition about them. Perilous times. They are here. Just the other day, there's a bill that, passed last week. You saw that bill. Yesterday, an earthquake. Are these things just happening because we sit in a very good platform? No. So the question I think we should be asking, and I'm glad you've asked this question, and I really need the people who are listening to this message today, the church leaders mainly, to ask themselves, what's our role?
Okay.
When you're talking about vices like corruption, when you're talking about hunger, when you're talking about the deaths, when you're talking about bills that are passing through our houses, when we are talking about majority of our leaders, including our president, subscribing to the Christian faith, we need to ask, where is our role?
And as you have put it right, because to that question, you have said the role is a front line.
Of course.
Role.
Yes.
It's been very good talking to you.
Thank you, Pastor, for having me. I appreciate this. Is a great time.
You've ended conversation with the mention of an earthquake.
Yes.
And that means you'll be back.
I will be back.
And we're just hearing all these insights about what's going on. And may God bless you as you continue
Pastor,
with your
thank you so much.
all many platforms that you have. And remember, we have a responsibility to spread
tabichism. We do.
Remember
Tabichism. I like that name. Thank you, Pastor, for having me. I really appreciate it.
It's been very insightful.
Thank you so much.
And God bless you.
Thank you.
Viewers, we've been talking about the state of the nation, and Tabichi, teacher from a remote part of this country, discovered by the world and honored by the world. He's a Kenyan. But what does he have? He has a heart.
True.
He's a teacher with a heart. And to all leaders, we must be leaders, not just leaders with money, but most importantly, leaders with a heart. And as pastors, again, in the spirit of Tabichism, as we move to the front line of fighting corruption and installing integrity, let's not look for fame. Like Tabichi, once you do the right thing, fame will find you.
True.
This has been Spotlight. Thanks for watching.